Amen. All right. Well, we have quite a bit to cover tonight, so I want to make sure that we dive right in, looking at the life of Moses still, and title this At Mount Sinai. They're going to be here for a minute, so whether this will be part one or of 7 is yet to be seen. I want to jump right into chapter 19. Verses 1 through 8 here in the beginning. It says, on the first day of the 3rd month after the Israelites left Egypt, on that very day they came to the desert of Sinai. After they set out from Rephidim, they entered the desert of Sinai, and Israel camped there in the desert in front of the mountain. Then Moses went up to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain and said, this is what you are to say to the descendants of Jacob, and what you are to tell the people of Israel. You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites. So Moses went back and summoned the elders of the people and set before them all the words the Lord had commanded him to speak. The people all responded together, we will do everything the Lord has said. So Moses brought their answer back to the Lord. So, taking a look at verse 1, how long have they been embarking on the Exodus? 3 months. That helped so much last week too, thank you. 3 months, all right? It says on the first day of the 3rd month after the Israelites left Egypt. So, hold that thought for a minute. That's going to come back up later. Take a look at Exodus 3:1. Did you put these in, Joe? Maybe you didn't. Okay. 3:1, 12, and 18. I don't want to go back and reread the whole chapter 3, folks, so I'm giving you the pertinent verses that I want to look at. But in Exodus chapter 3, verse 1, it says, now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to, Horeb, the mountain of God. Okay? So Horeb, however you want to say it, is the mountain of God. This is where God spoke to him in the burning bush on Mount Horeb. All right? I'm reminding you of that. Take a look at verse 12. And God said, I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. Now what's the sign? When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. What mountain are they going to worship God on? Okay? Good. Verse 18, the elders of Israel will listen to you. Then you and the elders are to go to the king of Egypt and say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. Let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God. Now, so you got a couple of things there. Number one, Mount Horeb is where God was speaking to Moses on the burning bush. He tells him that the sign is going to be that y'all are going to worship me on this mountain when you leave Egypt. And that he tells them, tell Pharaoh to let you all go, take a 3-day journey in the wilderness so you can worship me. Now, going back to what we read first in Exodus 19 tonight, how long have they been out there? Okay? They've been out here, it says, on the first day of the 3rd month after the Israelites left Egypt. That's not 3 days, okay? So why did it take them 3 months and not just 3 days like it appears in verse 18 of chapter 3 that they originally intended? They were whiny. Mum's the word. Huh? Yeah, but he was telling him to say that, so Okay, so what? I guess let me interpret what you were just saying. So are you saying that God was using inaccurate numbers, knowing that that wasn't going to happen? Okay, okay. I don't know what that means to what he was saying, though. I guess, does the 3 days matter about God saying to go, that they were going to take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to worship him? Yeah, and that's repeated now. It's repeated later to Pharaoh. That's just the first time he tells him, we got to go take our 3-day journey.
But the 3-day journey was just into the wilderness. It didn't say to take it to the mountain.
I think it probably implied that they were going to get there by 3 days. You're saying 3 days into the wilderness, but it would have been that they would have gotten there. Really and truly, the way I read him telling Pharaoh that is that he wasn't telling Pharaoh, let me go forever. Okay? I think Pharaoh probably was taking it at first, and I think we verified this when we look at Pharaoh's later, that Pharaoh's thinking, y'all are going to go out for a minute, worship God, and come back. Because if you recall, Pharaoh goes, wait a minute, what have I done? I've lost their whole services. You know, he wasn't thinking too straight when he let them go. But however you land on this, let me just tell you, as I mentioned to you before, that the mountain, now Deuteronomy almost exclusively, when talking about the mountain upon which I'm going to say David, Moses is going on with the Ten Commandments, uses Mount Horeb. Okay, not Mount Sinai, what we are seeing here. So scholars have said, well, over here is Mount Horeb, over here is Mount Sinai. Well, we'll fix that. They must be the same mountain. Okay, so let's just say that you accept that to be true, that Mount Horeb and Mount Sinai are the same thing. I mentioned this to you briefly when we discussed him striking the rock at Horeb, that some people have said, well, Horeb was the region, okay, and the mountain was Sinai. Some people said the region is Sinai and the mountain is Horeb. So we don't know, who cares, all right, about that. So let's just say that you say, well, all right, they're the same one. Now, where is this mountain? We've kind of talked about this a little bit. I've given you maps and prior notes. I didn't tonight because I didn't have enough space to give you the map in there. You can look back at last week's notes and see a pretty big map. Right in that Sinai Peninsula, at the bottom of that V of the Sinai Peninsula on your map is where the traditional site for Mount Sinai is today. Some people say, well, but it may have been a little further. They say, well, it couldn't have been further. The scholars will say, if you read a commentary, they'll say, well, it couldn't be that one over here further because they would have never been able to get there in 3 days, like verse 18 says. So there are scholars that say that those 3 days matter, okay, that really was an expectation. So then you can come back and say, well, why did they? And John gave a good theory. Maybe because they were whining. Well, I'm not sure, because I never see them really stopping for the whining part. You know, the pillar of cloud was out there by day. The pillar of fire by night was leading them, you know, on there. They didn't get set in there wandering, you know, quite yet. And even still, 3 days to 3 months is a tremendously long time. And there you have in the very bottom of the screen, at the bottom of that V, if you're working with me on either side of the Red Sea, is a traditional site of Mount Sinai. This is where some people are saying they possibly would be. This will come up here in a little bit later too. Then I'll bring this up to you. But from when they went to Egypt to get down here, it's taken them, we know from the scripture, 3 months to be able to get here. Maybe it's because of the amount of people. Maybe it's because they were whining, whatever the case may be. Maybe because of anything. And even if the mountain was in a different place, it doesn't matter. The scripture tells us right here that they have been traveling for 3 months. All right. Now, taking a look at that in Exodus 15, 22 through 23, when they were in the desert of Shur, at the bitter lakes, that's when they whined first about not having any water. And God told Moses, take the staff, strike the rock of Horeb. And they got some water. From there, or excuse me, I don't know if I gave you I think I gave you the right one. The bitter lakes part was when he threw the wood out there. I think I may have mixed that up in my head. But in Exodus 15, he struck the rock of Horeb when they were around up there. Well, that's a little ways away, the desert of Shur. If you see the wilderness of Shur, where they think that is, it's up there right above the green line. They're now down here in the Sinai Peninsula. I say all this to tell you that it's very difficult for us in this story to tell you where every one of these landmarks are today, how far they got there. I think that Diane was hitting on something that I don't think you can put in stone where it had to take them 3 days. That's not what it meant when they were saying that. But I think it is true that they did at least think they could have gotten to the mountain by 3 days if they didn't have any impediments. Probably having to cross that Red Sea wasn't something that they generally had come up with, that they were going to have to do that. And also it says in the Bible that God took them, not the easy way to Canaan land, which would have been up there in Philistia in the top, but he took them around. So that's probably why God said, look, due to the circumstances, I need you to take a different route. Let's take a look at something else. They finally arrived. They set up camp. It says in verse 2, in front of the mountain. Now, we see Moses, he's going to go up to the mountain. He's going to talk to God. I think if you look at it, maybe 8 times he's going back and forth up this mountain. I really hope it wasn't too far up there he had to go, because he had to go up there. Yeah, I know, but maybe he didn't have to go all the way to the top each and every time. And he climbed the mountain, God tell him something, now go tell the people. Here I go, back down the mountain. Tell the people. Listen, this is what he said. Go back up there. He said, wish I had a cell phone, But he goes back and forth. We'll see that throughout this. But, God had already made a covenant with Abraham. That was an unconditional covenant. That I'm going to make you into a great nation. I'm going to bless your descendants. It's going to be as number as the sands of the seashore, stars in the sky, all of that stuff. That was an unconditional covenant. What God is doing here in the verses that we just read is he is preparing them and making the Mosaic covenant. All right? It's the covenant that he's making between God, the people of Israel, through Moses. What's different with the Mosaic covenant versus the Abrahamic covenant? And I don't mean just the substance, do you know? It's definitely what? Okay. What, somebody said something over here? Yeah, he got a big word in there. The other one didn't have anything to do. Whenever he made the covenant with Abraham, they cut the sacrifice. God walked between the animals. He didn't say, all right, Abraham, now you got to come over here and do this too, showing your side of the bargain. It was unconditional. This is a conditional covenant, as Jonah pointed out. Verse 5, now if you obey me partially. I mean, obviously I did that for a reason. It says, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. I'll make you to a holy priesthood, a kingdom of priests and a royal holy nation. Excuse me. So he said, this is what's going to happen. I mean, they're going to be his people. They're going to be a holy nation anyway. We see, but do they obey God fully? Okay, so it's certainly a conditional covenant, and part of that, as I said, they was going to make them into a kingdom of priests, into a holy nation. Verse 8, what did they respond? They've just heard this. This is all they've heard so far. They heard, hey, God's going to do this if you keep your end of the bargain. And what did they say? Gotcha. Where do we sign? Sounds good to us. Well, God hadn't even told them everything they were supposed to believe. He has not given them the law yet. He's not told Moses any of that stuff yet. They really have, just like we do today, when you sign up for stuff, all these disclosures, it'll say, do you agree to the terms and conditions? You check, yes, 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 yes. and you had no idea what you're signing up for at the end of the day. Now, so they just agreed to it. The details of the covenant is going to come a little bit later. In Exodus 19, 9 through 13, says, Then the Lord said to Moses, I am going to come to you in a dense cloud, so that the people will hear me speaking with you and will always put their trust in you. Then Moses told the Lord what the people had said. And the Lord said to Moses, Go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow. Have them wash their clothes and be ready by the third day, because on that day the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. Put limits for the people around the mountain and tell them, Be careful that you do not approach the mountain or touch the foot of it. Whoever touches the mountain is to be put to death. They are to be stoned or shot with arrows. Not a hand is to be laid on them. No person or animal shall be permitted to live. Only when the ram's horn sounds a long blast may they approach the mountain. I spent a lot of time looking at some of this stuff, folks. Paying attention at the details, huh?
This is to explain, he's saying, I will have to kill you, and on the mountain, and later, you have the 10 commandments that says, don't murder.
Well, he's telling the people, he's telling everybody other than Moses. He's saying that you better tell them they better not come up here. Okay, Moses is going to have an access card, but the people aren't supposed to be coming up here. But pay attention to a couple of things maybe you miss, and I pay attention to a lot of these little things here. It says the Lord said to Moses, right, in verse 9, and then in 10 it says, and the Lord said to Moses, and be ready on the third day. And here you have God talking about himself, almost in the third person, because it says, on that day, the Lord will come down to you on Mount Sinai. He could have just said, I will come down there to you on Mount Sinai. But we know this is God in the sight of all the people. But God is preparing Moses to go out and prepare these people for him coming, okay, to them. And this is a theophany, all right? If you look at some commentaries, you may, or people writing about this, you may have people that say the theophany of Sinai, or the theophany at Sinai, or the great theophany. There's all kinds of titles people have given to this. A theophany is a visual manifestation of God to a human being. All right? Anybody ever seen God? Okay. So you haven't seen a theophany then. All right? For instance, when God showed up to Moses in the burning bush, that was a theophany. That was God in that burning bush talking to him. It said he saw the angel of the Lord. We kind of talked about exactly what did he see. Was it just fire, or was it an image of Jesus? That we kind of titled, even if it's Jesus, it's still a theophany because it's Jesus, but we'll call that a Christophany. All right, so again, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the fourth man that was in the fire, theophany right there. All right, you have several different times that's happened throughout the Bible. God saying, I'm coming to you. You're going to see something. You're going to hear something. All right. And I just, every time you hear people explain this, generally people are going to tell you anytime somebody's seen God, they've seen Jesus. They've seen what we would have looked like, somebody that would have looked like Jesus, because that is a physical manifestation of God. So let's just keep that in your mind's eye. Why does God command Moses to consecrate the people, though? And he puts all these restrictions about coming to the mountain, being killed, even how the manner by which they're supposed to be put to death if they do. Why go through all this rigorous rules? Huh? Holy? Yeah, I mean, this is not an ordinary mountain climbing, day. God is coming down here, and he's going, you got to go back and look, and I put this in your notes, that remember in Exodus 3 and verse 5, when Moses sees the burning bush, he goes up to approach the burning bush, and God said, do not come any closer. Yeah. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. God hadn't changed. Okay, he was on Mount Horeb then, he's going to come down on Mount Horeb now, and they're not just going to run in there, with the sandals on their feet and not having bathed and just had sex the night before. And you say, well, that's weird that you mentioned that, when he tells them later, abstain from sexual relations, okay, on there. So all of these things he was telling them about what they should and should not do. If you do break what I said and you touch the foot of the mountain, you're going to be killed. And here's the manner you're going to be killed by. They're going to shoot you with an arrow, right? It says, or stoned. Now, why arrows or stones? Said you're not going to touch them. You can't choke them. Okay, don't even touch these people, right? And y'all know this is nothing weird about God. That we serve a holy and a righteous God. This is a God that when Genesis chapter 2, 1 and 2, he's walking along in the garden, chatting there with Adam and Eve, petting the animals or whatever. Genesis chapter 3 happens, they sin. Separation from him has happened ever since. Okay, he cannot be in a place where there's going to be sin and disobedience to him. So this whole consecration was a big deal. They had to be physically, spiritually, all clean of everything possible, and there were absolute consequences if they were not. So we got through that. And verses 16 through 19 now. So God's done this. He's told them, I got this covenant for you. They've agreed. He tells Moses, look, prepare the people. You got 3 days to prepare. On the third day, I'm going to come see you. All right. And they better follow my rules. So on the morning of the third day, there was thunder and lightning with a thick cloud over the mountain and a very loud trumpet blast. Everyone in the camp trembled. Then Moses led the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. Mount Sinai was covered with smoke because the Lord descended on it in fire. The smoke billowed up from it like smoke from a furnace, and the whole mountain trembled violently. As the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and the voice of God answered him. So, although I've given you a picture, when you're reading this and you're thinking about it, there's several pictures of this out online. I picked one, not necessarily the mental picture that came in my mind, but what kind of mental picture, when you're reading those verses, what kind of mental picture, if you were standing there and you were looking, what would you be seeing? Is there like one thing you think, I think I know what I'm looking at? Huh? Sounds like it absolutely sounds like a volcano, okay? I've watched videos of Mount St. Helens erupting and watched other things of a volcano erupting. If you look at this, think of it again. There was thunder and lightning. A thick cloud came over the mountain. A very loud trumpet blast. Everyone in the camp trembled. Then Moses led the people to the camp. Here's the problem. And it talks a little bit later about the trembling and all that stuff in the fire as God descended down. That's not something I'm running towards, though. Okay? I mean, so it really, all of this description of God coming down, and if you read commentaries about this, a lot of people will speculate to you that Mount Horeb probably, or Mount Sinai, was probably a volcano. I had no idea whether it was a volcano or not. Really not pertinent to the story. God didn't have to use an actual, I hope that lava wasn't flowing down to the foot of the mountain, fixing to consume all the people if it was an actual volcanic eruption. So I don't think that it had to be a volcano, because this is not literally volcanic ash making this cloud. This is God. But why come in such, with all this violent looking, stuff to where we get a mental picture maybe of a volcanic eruption? Why wasn't it just this beautiful white silk and harps and all this other kind of stuff? You ever heard of God represented that way? You ever read that in the Bible? You maybe have heard it. You ever read a representation of God from reading the Bible of all of this beautiful silk, shiny angel wings and all that kind of stuff? Yeah, God is getting their attention right here. He's not trying to appeal to them. He's not trying to win these over. Going, oh, let me put on this show of beauty so they'll love me more and all that. He's showing up in who He is, might and power and authority. He's laid down the law to them in a very clear-cut way, and He's saying, I am the boss. Here's the way. I looked at this picture because I never had a mental image of maybe they could have seen an outline of somebody on a throne-like thing up there. Several pictures had that. Whether they could see anything like that, I don't know. It looked like they could not see anything but a cloud and fire or whatever. But I think about God has already showed up and showed out up to this point. I mean, He's done the signs with Moses with the staff and the leprosy and all of those things He did before the Israelites. Then He goes up before Pharaoh and does those things and turns the staff into a snake, and the 10 plagues happen. The Red Sea, the rock, throwing a piece of wood into the water. I mean, He's done all of these things to show them. And here again now, He's coming out with all of this pomp and circumstance as far as this might. Why? Yeah. Yeah, in chapter 20, in Exodus 20, verses 20, 21, excuse me, I may have put it in your notes. In chapter 20, verses 18 through 21, it tells us in those verses, they were so afraid after having seen this. All right, they said, we're not going to, Moses, you talk to us. Don't let him talk to us. He may kill us, they say. That was a perfect response. I would have been that way too. No, I think I'm close enough to that, Just Moses, you keep on talking to us now. You go deal with him, because that seems scary, right there. He had the people's attention in doing this. They stood at the distance. Moses then, as I say, he ascends, he descends the mountain several times, communicating between God and the people. Chapters 20 through 23 are going to give you more details of the covenant itself. He's going to tell Moses about the 10 Commandments. He's got other things that he's going to tell Moses about. Really giving us those details, if you will, of the covenant relationship with the Israelites. And you can look through that. If those of you who have read through this, you've seen it as he talks about servants and injuries and property and all of this. He gets pretty detailed about what God is requiring of them to be obedient to the covenant. They said, yes, we'll obey, but what are they obeying? Well, here's your list of rules. And remember, I was talking to my kids about this today, and they had gotten in trouble, both of Eli and Ansley, for some reason or another. And I said, listen, you do not have to be in trouble. That is not on me. Okay? That is on you. You don't want your tablet taken away? Don't do wrong. Now, what do I control, though? Yeah, but you got go back 2 steps. I control the rule. I laid down the rule, and I said, this is what you shall not do. Now, that's the culpability that I do have, because without me doing that, there was nothing for them to break. There was nothing for them to do wrong. So yes, I told them, I take full responsibility to telling you, you better not do that. But I said, it's up to you to obey or disobey, and I can't make you do either one. I then still control the consequences, though. And I said, and you will get consequences. God is the one that set that model up. He's told them, I'm setting the rules out for you. Okay, you've told me you will obey me. What are you going to obey? And he's telling them in chapters 20 through 23, here's the rules. Now, some of them may have went, ooh, that's hard. Oh, I don't know about that. Ouch. He's got a different way of thinking. about that. Hey, you've agreed to do it. But even after that, let's look at chapter 24. So they've been given the Ten Commandments, as far as he's told Moses about the Ten Commandments, okay? The Decalogue, the 10 statements that we put, but he's so much more laws and commandments he's given them. Go into chapter 24, so I skipped 3 chapters. It says, Then the Lord said to Moses, Come up to the Lord, you and Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel. You are to worship at a distance. But Moses alone is to approach the Lord. The others must not come near, and the people may not come up with him. When Moses went and told the people all the Lord's words and laws, they responded with one voice. Everything the Lord has said, we will do. All right. Before, you could have said, well, they were just clicking accept on the terms and conditions and they hadn't had a chance to read them. Now, they've had a chance for Moses to have told them the details. And they still said, yeah, we got this. God, can you see? I mean, God is not a snake oil salesman. He's not a con artist. He's not trying to get one over on anybody. He's putting this stuff out here very plain and giving them chance after chance. Are you sure? You signing up for this? Let me tell you a little bit more. How about now? Yeah, I still got it. He's still checking in with them, making sure that they understand this covenant relationship. You can't go back and say, God, you wasn't too clear. Have you ever read the law? It is way too clear, some of the things that tells you to do. It tells you who to sleep with, who not to sleep with, and when not to sleep with them. Every family member possible. Then it tells you don't even lay down with animals. I mean, who has got to be told that? But it's in there, Leviticus chapter 18. Okay? I mean, these people cannot say, and we can't say that God is ambiguous in what his standards for us are. He's made it pretty clear. Now, they've agreed. In verses 4 through 8 of chapter 24, Moses then wrote down everything the Lord had said. He got up early the next morning, built an altar at the front of the mountain, and set up 12 stone pillars representing the 12 tribes of Israel. Then he sent young Israelite men, and they offered burnt offerings and sacrificed young bulls as fellowship offerings to the Lord. Moses took half of the blood and put it in bowls, and the other half he splashed against the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant and read it to the people. They responded, We will do everything the Lord has said. We will obey. Moses then took the blood, sprinkled it on the people, and said, This is the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made with you in accordance with all these words. So, they have gotten it summarized real quick. They've gotten it orally told to them. Moses then went back and wrote it all down, read it to them again from the written part. They agreed, and then the covenant was confirmed, all right, with them. Now, it mentions this book of the covenant here in the scripture. Where is that book today? Yeah, he would have written down the Ten Commandments and the other laws. Y'all don't have a copy of it at the house? It was in chapter 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23. All of those chapters we didn't read, that's what he wrote down. That's the book of the covenant. Right there. It's not a secret book. It's not in a mountain somewhere in New York that Joseph Smith has to dig out to have the Mormons. I mean, we have it written down, the things that God said. You want to know where Moses got these chapters at? He got them when he was there on Sinai, directly from God. So we have access to this book of the covenant. The laws aren't done yet. I mean, you still have the whole book of Leviticus coming up. That hasn't occurred yet. This is the main meat of the laws for this covenant that he's making with them. Then what you're able to see after he's written this book of the law, that in verse 5, then he sent young Israelite men, and they made some sacrifices of some animals. What's going on here? Prior to this, is there a sacrificial system in place? Moses hadn't written the laws about sacrificing yet. Abraham made some sacrifices, yeah. Or is there have the priests been created yet? So what are these young men doing? How do they know what to do? It's not hard. Sounds maybe hard, but it's really not.
They had sacrifices. The world, the known world at that time, different people had different sacrifices. So that was common knowledge. But they were ratifying the tree here. They were affirming the tree, covenant here.
Mm-hmm.
And they blood had to be spilled. They offered that sacrifice.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned, and that's where I wanted y'all to go. I was hoping somebody was going to remind me about what did Jethro do after he heard about all of what God had done last week. Made a sacrifice, okay? Sometimes we'll think, oh my goodness, there was no such thing as sacrificing before Moses, wrote down the law when God told him these things. But no, it was just the way things were in the world back then of any type of deity, that sacrifices would be made to God. There are still sacrifices made to God today. You do it. Somebody goes, huh? When? Huh? Oh, there really are still animal sacrifices, but I'm saying even without that, when God does something for you in a major way, you'll come, maybe you'll say, you know what, God, thank you for doing that on April the 13th. I'm going to catch you and make a sacrifice to you come January 1st of the next year. And we'll call it a New Year's resolution or something like that. But when God shows up and shows out in your life, many folks, there's something wells up in you. Oh, I'm going to do some more. I'm going to give some money, or I'm going to give more of my time to God. Or there's something within you that wants to honor God for what he's done for you, whether that's through your worship or something like that. So a sacrifice is just giving something up and doing something for him. That has never changed in all the history. It just was back then. The way they did that was that they would slaughter some animal, and then they were not always doing that just to see a dead carcass there. They ate afterwards. They cooked the thing, and some pieces went to, the priest and all them, and then they had big meals and festivals and all of those things to God. The festivals and all of that stuff was just as much as a praise and honor and worship to God as the giving of the sacrifice was to them. It was a whole celebration for what God had done. Now here, and Jim alluded to this a while ago, it's a little bit different than just saying, hey, I'm going to have this celebration. These types of covenants, right, they're binding agreements. What do we do today whenever we want to ensure that when you go to buy a house, so I want y'all to think in these terms. When you go to buy a house today and you say, I want that house over there, I'm going to give you $300,000 for it. All you have to do is sign a contract saying you'll buy the house. What do you have to do? Huh? You got to put down some earnest money. You got to give something to show that more than just your signature that you promised to buy that house. You got to lay something down on the table, all right, and give it up. Agreements today often require some type of guarantee or collateral or something that's out there like that, something that maybe you have to give up or whatever. We may have different ways that looks a lot cleaner and prettier, but the stuff is still the same. There has to be an event. Even today when there's not all of that, you have a time where you come, you sit down, you sign, this person agrees, that person agrees, right? And you make an agreement. This is the same thing. I put in your notes that a lot of scholars will look at this treaty, and Jim said treaty a while ago, so now I got the treaty in my mind, because they look at this covenant as an example of a suzerain vassal treaty that was popular during this time period, where you had a superior person, which would be the suzerain, all right, and a vassal would be the lesser person, and there were these agreements that they were made in the legal world at that time between those people, and obviously it was a conditional treaty, and the people had to do what the other person said to get what the person was telling them they were going to get. It's like when you lend money. Somebody's got more money than you. They lend you money. They say, do this, do that. You can get the money. Pay me back at these scheduled times. You can have the money. People during this time, not only did they make sacrifices to gods and want to give praise and honor and worship to a God that's done something for them, but they also understood agreements. These were not idiots. They were not cavemen. They made deals all the time. They bought and sold things. So there was a process back then to enter into an agreement, just like we had today. When you come up, you said back then, we used to do everything on a what? A handshake. At this time, they did everything with blood. All right? That blood was the signal. I put in your notes, what is this whole thing, the significance of the blood here, right? What you see, especially when you're talking about a deity, they killed the animals, the Israelite men. Now, this was the beginning. I don't know if all of these Israelite men were Levites, but the Levites who had descended from Aaron are going to become the priest. Probably these young men who had sacrificed these animals may have been some of the earlier ones that God was going to use in the priesthood that he was going to make here in just a little while. But they make these sacrifices. Moses then takes some of the blood, splits it in two, and he puts some of the blood on what? The altar where they were going to sacrifice. And that blood was representative for God's side. Right? And then what's to do with the other blood? Sprinkle it on the people. He did that kind of Methodist baptizing. You know, sprinkled it on the folks. I don't know how many folks he sprinkled it on, but hopefully they didn't have enough blood for 2 million people, so I'm not exactly sure how far that went, but there were some stand-ins at least that he sprinkled this on that were going to, say, hey, we're representative of the nation. But right there, folks, that animal died for the sacrifice. That blood was the ink for this deal. God's signature here, their signature on the other side. It was no longer just about words, okay? This was a covenant of blood. Now, we've done that when you were kids. You say, I'm going to cut my finger and, make a blood promise and pinky promises and all that kind of stuff. That blood thing was a big deal. Did y'all ever do that? Yeah. And make that blood. Why would you? I didn't, because I didn't want to get hepatitis or something like that, or worse. But that made a big deal, because that blood, that's your life. That's your life's blood right there. And so they did this. Now, so now they're in this agreement with God. It's been confirmed. Verses 9 through 18, it says, now Moses, Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel went up. Now they all got to climb a little bit. And saw the God of Israel. Hold on, Joe. Back up. You see that? I'm going to stop back in here in a minute. But they saw the God of Israel. Under his feet were something like a pavement made of lapis lazuli, as bright blue as the sky. But God did not raise his hand against these leaders of the Israelites. They saw God, and they ate and drank. The Lord said to Moses, come up to me on the mountain and stay here, and I will give you the tablets of stone with the law and commandments I have written for their instruction. Then Moses set out with Joshua his aide, and Moses went up on the mountain of God. He said to the elders, wait here for us until we come back to you. Aaron and Hur are with you, and anyone involved in a dispute can go to them. When Moses went up on the mountain, the cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord settled on Mount Sinai. For 6 days the cloud covered the mountain, and on the 7th day the Lord called to Moses from within the cloud. To the Israelites, the glory of the Lord looked like a consuming fire on top of the mountain. Then Moses entered the cloud as he went up on the mountain, and he stayed on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. Whew. There's a lot in that too. So I asked the question, what did Moses and the other people see there in verse 9? 10, really, I'm sorry. Did they see his face? Okay. Did they see his face? They know what color God's eyes are. Huh? What we know they seen was something, it says that the pavement, it says under his feet was pavement that was bright like the blue sky. I tell you now, they didn't see the face of God, because if they saw the face of God, Moses is going to be mad, because Moses wanted to see his face a little bit later down the road, and God just turned his back to him and showed him his back. That's all he'd let him see, right? So I doubt very seriously they were looking at God's eyes. The Bible tells us nobody's seen the face of God, like that. So they seen his feet, they seen, but there were others. I don't know why they couldn't see everything, but these folks were getting a little bit better vantage point than the others. They've gone up on the mountain, hadn't they? It says that they went up and saw the God of Israel, so they go all the way to the top. This is why I'm telling you, I don't know that every time was Moses ascending. Did he have to go all the way to the top? Was God talking to him? I don't know, because it kind of appears that they'd go up a little bit, and he said, all right, y'all stay here. I'm going to go up a little bit further and then talk to God. And, Joshua, it says he'd taken Joshua, his aide, with him. But Joshua did not go into the cloud. Only Moses went into the cloud to talk to God there. But isn't that something? Now, it said they saw God and they ate and drank. This is now Moses, Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel. All right, about 74 folks or so. You want to throw Joshua in there? Maybe he was there 70, 75 people. They go up there and they're having a meal on the mountain. What are they eating? Okay. Huh? And Moses, it said earlier, right, that in verse 1 through 3, then the Lord said to Moses, come up to the Lord, and he tells him to bring Aaron, Abihu, Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel. And it says, you are to worship at a distance. So God has already said for this to happen. And for these people, they're just following what God's already told them to do. Why are they doing this? I said it to you earlier. Huh? Yeah, God said to you. It's always a good answer. Let me ask you a question. When, lots of folks died in the different wars that we've had all over the country and the world before. Civil War, Revolutionary Wars, Iraq, Vietnam, all of these things with the world wars. And comes up on Memorial Day. And what do we do? What does Memorial Day celebrate? Veterans? Yes, but those that died, right? And how do we celebrate that? We fire up the grill. The good ones fire up the grill. They fire everything we do in this thing. I don't matter something. You got Juneteenth, we fire up that grill. You got Christmas, we cooking. You got Thanksgiving, we cooking. St. Patrick's Day, we're drinking. Not we, but others. I guess they do eat some kind of hot dogs or something during St. Patrick's Day. But everything we do to celebrate something, how do you celebrate? You eat and drink. What's it say they did? They ate and drank. We ain't changed a lick. Everything we do, bring over the food and the drinks. We're going to have a party. The Israelites, every time they have a festival, what are they doing? They eating Passover, blood of the lamb. What do they do at the Passover? You eat bitter herbs and stuff, yuck. But they eat. Again, I said this earlier. It's the way things go. It would have been very odd We don't know how many animals were slaughtered for the sacrifice. It was a bunch of blood that was there. But when you were going to kill these animals, nobody ever said kill all these animals and leave these carcasses out here for animals to eat and just slit the throat of the lamb and leave it out there. No, they did that, and they would have a meal. Right? And that meal is a part of the celebration, if you will, the honoring of God. We've sacrificed this animal. Thank God for the provisions that we have, and really a fellowship time with the people. But this was kind of the culmination, the celebration. You've had the bloody part, the time where you've offered, they've gone and cleaned the blood off of the foreheads and their clothes, and now they're going to sit down and eat this meat. At least portions of it that had been prepared. But generally, the Bible precludes in the law for us to eat outside of where God says it's okay, but certainly meat that's been sacrificed to other gods, right? So you don't eat meat from those sacrifices. That's not a good thing, but eating sacrificial meat. But generally, there were even rules about what part the meat that you would eat if it had been sacrificed for God, but always the priest got some of that meat, and that's how they sustained themselves, with the meat from some sacrifices and things of that nature. So you see this kind of leadership, the elders of Israel and all of that, going up to God. But did all of these people get to go into the cloud? What might this be a foreshadowing of? I hope not. Somebody say heaven? I hope not. No. Yeah. I see a picture of the tabernacle and the temple, right? The people got to stay outside. The priests and all were able to go into a certain part of the temple, but only one person ever got to go into the Holy of Holies in the temple, and that was whom? The high priest. That he's about to tell these people how to make the tabernacle. After we get past this, he's going to say, you build it. So God first had a tent, right? He had the tent of meeting, and in that you had the Holy of Holies. He had the outer sections and the most holy place and all of that sections of this. And this is exactly how God is doing this on this mountain. All right? He's kept the same standard. People are on the outer parts. They can go around, but they can only go so far. Priests and the leadership people. And why? Why were the priests and the leadership folks, why were these people able to go further than just a regular population? Why they get a special ticket, huh? Huh? Maybe because of their experience. Maybe because they knew God had told Moses, you need to do this, and maybe they were going to make sure that they were more consecrated. I mean, there were rules, especially as you go forward later, that they had to wash and they had to do all this, and they knew this is what they did every day. So they were allowed to do some things, because in that group, you should have been able to see more obedience, more purity, more attention to detail and all of that. You should expect that out of people that are elders of Israel, and these people that are right here close with Moses and Aaron, right? Shouldn't you expect? Do you think that God doesn't he still expect that those of us that are people that are leadership? Yes, there is no doubt, folks, that every now and again there is perks for being in leadership with God. That every now and again you may feel like you're a little bit closer to God than your average run-of-the-mill person that is out there. That's why you call the leaders sometimes to pray for you, right? Somehow you figure they're closer to God than you are. That's not always true, but why is it that those people in leadership might in fact be a little bit closer? Because maybe they have been more dedicated, or they should have at least. And guess what? Are all the leaders, and have I always done? No. But you know what? God expects that of us. He expects that if you're going to be in leadership, if you're going to be an elder, and this Moses and Aaron, he judged those people at a higher level than he was going to judge the other folks. because they should have known better. They get a little bit better access, but guess what? The higher you go, what do they say? The stricter the judgment, because the harder the fall is if you have to fall from the higher place on there. Paul says, woe to those people who are going to do this. The judgment's going to come. So it looks like a whole lot of, maybe I can climb the mountain higher. I don't know. It comes with a lot. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so we're looking for chapter 24, verses 10 and 11 again. I'm not sure on this. Where it says, okay.
The pavement?
Where it says they saw God and they ate and drank.
Uh-huh.
Is that saying they went off the mountain, went back down, and they had a feast? It doesn't make sense.
I honestly, just the way I've plainly read it, I didn't dive into that. I took it they ate on the mountain wherever they got to.
I did too. God had to furnish the food.
Well, I just thought they would have taken it with them. Either way, it would. I thought about a little bit what you said, and that's why I just come that they must have taken it up there. That's why I was saying earlier that to me, there's always this time. I mean, even it appears to me they were here, but Joshua went even a little bit further than they went with Moses. But then Moses was the only one that went into the cloud. So it's like, and not every time, I don't know how far Moses had to go up this mountain the whole time, or was there, they had to be off the foot of the mountain, but did they go all the way up to where the cloud was? I don't know. It seemed that there was levels.
In verse 12 it says, and now the Lord said to Moses, come up to me on the mountain and remain there. So he could have said that he had gone back down, or he could have said that he was still with them.
And they may have, the people have never been allowed to go on the mountain though. The population of the people, right? He said, they come to the foot, but the people. Now, if you look at verse 1, it says, then the Lord said to Moses, come up to the Lord, you, Aaron, and all the 7 elders of Israel. You are to worship, it says, at a distance. Where are they coming up to? So that's where I take it from chapter 24, verse 1, that they went up at least a little bit higher than where the other people were. And then what you see down in verses 10 and 11 is them actually doing that. So I don't know. It's very possible they walked up to him for a minute and got the instructions and went back and ate. I don't know. Yeah. 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 I think they were seeing things about God the other people couldn't see too. I mean, I don't think everybody was seeing this blue pavement stuff in his feet. It only said they were seeing God. So that's where, it appears to me they were, like I said, that's why I get the image, and I didn't read that in the commentary. That's totally my thoughts on this, that the people are down here in the outer court. They're going into the holy place. Moses got to go to the Holy of Holies. That's what's going to happen in the tabernacle. That's what's going to happen in the temple. So where they were, though, it is, all of these chapters are odd when you start trying to figure out exactly where they were placed, where it was with the geography, what type of mountain. It will mess me up. Why did they go back to, were they in Horeb already, went back to Rephidim to fight the Amalekites, and then come back? There's this stuff that messed me up the past couple of days about that. So that is definitely one of them. But if they did have to take the food up on the mountain, maybe it wasn't too far. And where they would have eaten, I don't know. Where did he eat for 40 days? So that's where I wanted to end. Moses finally, after this meal and all of that stuff, he's entered into the cloud. So he's gone way up because the cloud kind of probably would have been at the top. He's told all these other people to wait, with him. He's going to go there for a month plus, right? What is he doing? What is he doing? Look at what this says. He says to him, now the Lord in verse 12 said to Moses, come up to me on the mountain, stay here, and I will give you the tablets. Did Moses take a chisel and a hammer and ting, ting, ting the tablets? God wrote those tablets. Sometimes we think, and this is why some of this stuff is bad, sometimes we think that the tablets are 5 of the 10 commandments on one side and 5 of the 10 commandments on the other tablet. That is not so. He used the back and fronts of these tablets. The tablets contained all of what he said. The Ten Commandments were a part of it, and the other part of the law of the covenants too. So we had these pretty Ten Commandment things, this 2 tablets just on the front, 5 over here and 5 over there. God wrote much more of the stuff of what he had said. We put a whole lot of emphasis on the Ten Commandments. Those were the big kind of phrases right here, but he had all the other details that were out there too. God is going to give him these 10 Commandments, but Moses is up here getting a lot more further instruction. But he's already written down the book of the covenant, right? That's already been written. He read that to him earlier. So what's he doing for 40 days? Well, you'll see later. You'll see later. If you go into chapter 25, he's fixing to start getting a bunch of instructions on how to build God's tabernacle, right, at first. It's going to be pretty detailed. Now, the last thing I think I put in your notes, and I slipped them in my Bible, they've gone now 3 months. They're going to wait another 40 days and 40 nights. How long is it going to take them to break this covenant? Yeah. As soon as Moses comes, well, not as soon as Moses, he's only up there, They're breaking it while he's up there, and y'all know what he did. So we'll look. We're gonna start breezing through, like as I did today, 4 or 5 chapters. I wanted to show you this stuff because the covenant has now been made, folks. All right. And I'm doing this over the life of Moses, right? Not a study of the entire Bible of what the Hebrew people have went through. So Moses has brokered this covenant with the people. We're obviously going to look at this part of his life, at what he's done. Y'all know how this story ends for Moses, and you know that he doesn't get to make it into the promised land. And that'll be a tough thing as we really have dived into his life. Yes, sir. That's right. Yes. Yeah. That's right. That's right. Yeah. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into the Sabbath and the week, because you say, well, why? You know, what's God showing, Moses up there? And now Joshua and these others are waiting on him too. Stay right there. Wait on me. You hang up after 3 minutes of somebody putting you on hold, okay? But when you look at the people, and I think about Moses and how frustrating it must have been, this task that God had given him, and the people, and having to climb that mountain so many times, to go down there and tell these people. But when we think about that, put it in perspective, how frustrated is God? And we hadn't changed one lick. He has been the same. Hopefully what you've been able to see through this is God has been the same. He's still the same today. He requires, we're living in the covenant of grace now, okay? But he requires still sacrifices. He required Jesus' sacrifice. But what he requires for us, as Paul said to the church at Rome, be a living sacrifice. He does not require you to cut off your hand, slit your throat, kill a bull or a sheep. He wants your everyday life. Not one day a week, not when you can find time. He wants everything. I think, I'm pretty sure when I've looked at the ledger, he's earned it. Okay? In the same way we're looking at these people going, look at all he's done for them and set them free and everything and all this. Our lives are the same. If you were to look back at your life, it's the same. He showed up and showed out in the same way. He showed you that he's God. He showed you that he's mighty. He showed you he'll provide to you. In your time of need, you need water, he'll get you water. You need manna, he'll get you some manna. You're fussing because you want some meat, he's going to give you some meat. He's going to do all of this. And at the end of the day, all we are doing is going, give me. He'll ask us to do one little thing and we're all mad about it. We're not. I'm telling you though, he keeps tarrying with us, but we're in this time for the world. He's done. And like he told he told Moses to go get his people out of Egypt. He's going to whisper here in just probably, maybe tomorrow during the presidential debate. We'll see. That he'll turn over there to Jesus and say, go get my people. There's not going to be any fight really in that. And he's going to come get us. And every day when he comes to get us, and if we're going to be caught up in the rapture, I just love that song, One Day Jesus, right? That you hope on that day there won't have to be a big change in your life, because he'll find us being about his business every single day. All right, let's pray. God, I just thank you for the reading of your word today. And Lord, as we're looking back over thousands of years of human history, Lord, it is sometimes difficult for us, God, to pinpoint every last historical and geographical detail that may be here. But Lord, what we see clearly through your word is how you have taken care of your people Israel, how you are equipping Moses and the leaders, Lord, to lead them. And Lord, they are just barely into this journey that they're going to have in the wilderness. Father, and I just pray as we're looking at this from a historical vantage point, Lord, that you would show us clearly, Father, the applications for our lives today, and how, Lord, we're making some of the same decisions and some of the same mistakes even that the Israelite people made, Father, as it takes us hardly no time to fall back into self-pity, denial, sin in our life and old ways, Lord, and you're every day taking care of us. Lord, go with us as we leave this place today. Keep everybody safe. Lord, bring us back, Lord, on Sunday as we come to worship you in spirit and in truth. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.